Team USA got destroyed in 3-on-3 men's basketball at the Olympics. Could a team of Zags have done better?
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Tuesday, and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, make every moment more. It's the dog days of summer. The sports aren't sportsing like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, Sonny Greinacher has taken home a gold medal. Anton Watson signed his first professional contract. A former Zag recruiting target commits to a school in the Big East. We got all of that on today's show. We got some Olympic previews for the games on Tuesday as well. All that coming up. But first, we lead with a spillover mailbag question and a conversation about the Team USA men's basketball and really just 3-on-3 Olympic basketball in general. The question here comes from GU Big Rig on Discord, who says, in 3-on-3 basketball, the USA teams have had major struggles in the Olympics, while the 5-on-5 basketball teams have completely dominated. 3-on-3 is clearly a different style of basketball. How would you explain why Team USA struggles so much with 3-on-3 when they perform so well with 5-on-5? Well, this leads to another conversation that I wanted to have, and kind of the idea of projecting how some Gonzaga lineups could look in a 3-on-3 basketball space. Obviously, Spokane is home to one of the largest the largest 3-on-3 basketball tournament in the world in Hoop Fest. So 3-on-3 basketball is often on the minds of Gonzaga basketball fans and players and various other people affiliated with the program. This has also been a conversation nationally as the Team USA on the men's side really didn't do well at all. Jimmer Fredette got hurt. He was the kind of the only really well-known name. I know Brent Barry's brother, Canyon Barry, was on the roster. There's a couple other guys who played college ball, but not anybody who'd ever played in the NBA outside of Jimmer. Not a lot of prominent college stars on this roster as well. So there's a lot of conversation about it. The women's side, they struggled as well. We'll talk more about that. They actually did end up medaling at the expense of Kacie Bosch and the Team Canada 3-on-3 roster, but the reasoning is actually more simple than the differences between 5-on-5 stylistically and 3-on-3 and investment from Team USA and things like that all play a factor. But the reality of the situation is pretty much just this. The personnel isn't as good. That's not a secret. And the reason is because of FIBA's eligibility rules. Rosters for 3-on-3 basketball at the Olympic Games have to include 2 players who are ranked within the top 10 of that country and 2 players ranked within the top 50 in terms of points accrued in the 3-on-3 circuit. The reason, or the way to gain points and to be ranked in the top 10 or ranked in the top 50 and be eligible to compete for your country at the Olympic Games is to play a lot of games on the FIBA World Tour. I found all this information out from a great article at NBC written by Chris Landers. Want to give a shout out there. But basically, in order to get ranked highly, you have to participate in a lot of events. You have to play a lot of 3-on-3 basketball at FIBA sanctioned events. NBA players aren't going to do that. It interferes with the NBA season in some ways. And even if it doesn't, they value their off-season time. So it's hard. It's the USA basketball is probably not investing in trying to convince NBA players who have these, multi-million-dollar contracts where teams are going to say, heck no, we don't want you putting yourself in an injury risk to play 3-on-3 basketball to, maybe represent the country in an event that frankly isn't as important to USA basketball as the 5-on-5 side is. So those factors are there, but ultimately NBA players, they're not going to do this. You're not going to see them doing this. The people who are medaling, the people who are participating in 3-on-3 are playing 3-on-3 basketball pretty much all year round. Jimmer Fredette plays 3-on-3 basketball all year round with this team. Like they're comfortable, they're familiar with each other. They play basketball in these 3-on-3 settings all the time. But that's because he's not playing professionally anywhere else. He's not playing in the NBA. He's not playing in the G League. He's not playing overseas. They ran into similar issues on the women's side, although they it wasn't as significant. Ryan Howard is a WNBA player. Cam Brink, who was going to represent the team before she suffered an ACL injury, she's a WNBA player for the Sparks. Haley Van Lith is a prominent college basketball player. Like De'Erica Hamby also plays in the WNBA. So it wasn't as big of an issue on the women's side. Of course, the WNBA season is about half as long as the NBA season. And while most WNBA players play professionally overseas, the ones who do not have this opportunity to play 3-on-3 basketball and potentially represent their country at the Olympics. That's not really a way that it works on the men's side. So the simple answer to this question is they aren't able to field as competitive as a team as they are on the 5-on-5 side because of the way that the rules are stipulated. Until those rules change, or until the USA Basketball emphasizes trying to get, better players, with no disrespect to the players on the roster currently, but to get better players, more recently retired guys or NBA players to participate in this event so that they can, because you take the 4 best NBA players who didn't make Team USA's roster, you throw them on this thing, they're medaling. It's cake. It's cake for them. You throw Jalen Brunson and Jaylen Brown and Chet Holmgren, or you can do all Jalen team, Jalen Brunson, Jaylen Brown, Jalen Suggs. You throw those 3 out there, you win a gold. Guaranteed. You don't even have any size, but you still win a gold. That team is definitely good enough to get it done. Jalen Johnson. I'm sure there's other bigs you can think of with the name Jalen there, but it's easy. It would be easy for Team USA to put together a gold medal. I don't want to say it's easy to win gold. It's never easy to win gold, but they could put together a roster that's far more competitive and talented than the other teams in this men's basketball 3-on-3 tournament if those eligibility rules weren't a factor. In fact, one of the things I wanted to do on this show, and we'll kind of get to it now, is could a team of Zags compete and win a gold medal in men's basketball 3-on-3? And I think the answer is kind of overwhelmingly yes. And part of it is because I think the construction of a 3-on-3 roster, if you're picking Team USA specifically, so that means you're not picking Brandon Clark, who would represent Canada. You're not picking Andrew Nembhard or Kelly Olynyk or Rui Hachimura or Filip Petrusev. You're picking specifically Team USA type players. Your roster would be Chet Holmgren, Corey Kispert, and Jalen Suggs. And that team wins gold. You take this entire field, which there's plenty of talented players in the other countries. You take this entire field, you run it 9 times, you run it 10 times, 9 times out of 10, Team USA with Holmgren, Kispert, Suggs wins gold. That's a phenomenal roster. Defensively, Corey's a little bit limited in isolation. Basketball is kind of a bigger factor in 3-on-3 settings, so teams would isolate Corey Kispert and attack him. But again, you still have Chet roaming around the rim. You still have Jalen Suggs, who's the best point of attack defender in literally the NBA right now, or at least the top 5 point of attack defender in the NBA. You have an elite rim protector in Chet Holmgren. Both those guys are offensively dynamic. Kispert is a lights out shooter. That team wins gold. And it's the best roster you could construct. People might say, well, you could put Julian Strawther on there. You could. He could technically represent Puerto Rico in this situation, so I don't think he would. I think that alone kind of takes him out of the conversation here. So this is the roster. And if you were to do it out of current Gonzaga players, it's a little bit more complicated. I spent a long time trying to figure out what I would want this roster to look like if it were current Zags, because you don't get Ryan Nembhard because he's Canadian. You obviously don't get Ismaila Diane. You don't get Emmanuel Inocente. You're not as concerned about not having those guys on the roster, frankly, but you not getting Ryan Nembhard is a really tough loss. I think roster construction-wise, you probably go, this is the one I wrote down, Nolan Hickman, Steele Venters, Ben Gregg. And that may seem odd. I think Graham Ike is a bit limited in the format of 3-on-3 basketball. He'd be put in isolation and space quite a bit. Ben Gregg's not a great defender in one-on-one situations. I don't know that he's dramatically better than Graham Ike, but at least he has more offensive versatility and the ability to step out away from the rim and hit outside shots. I know Graham shot 36% from 3 last year, but it was on a low volume, and I think it was a bit of an aberration. I also would strongly consider Dusty Stromer because he's a better point of attack defender, which matters a lot in 3-on-3 basketball. The problem is floor spacing also matters a lot, and Steele Venters' ability to shoot threes and move without the basketball are really big strengths. So between Venters and Stromer, I think there's a strong argument either way. Certainly EK, Huff, and Gregg, I don't think you have 2 out of those 3. This interestingly leaves off Michael Ajayi, who I think is incredibly talented. I'm not sure he fits. You kind of have to have Hickman because you need a point guard. And if you can't get Nembhard, you could do something goofy and go like Caliph Battle, Michael Ajayi, Ben Gregg. That might be really fun. A lot of athletes, a lot of bodies, a lot of dudes there, but it's still kind of missing something. So using Gonzaga's current roster, a little bit trickier. But I think if you were to do just like, hey, we wanted to make a team of all Gonzaga players competing in the 3-on-3, if Chet Holmgren, Corey Kispert, and Jalen Suggs were in this event together, I almost guarantee you that they would have won gold. And oh man, that would have been a heck of a lot of fun to watch. Well, speaking of Zags winning golds, it happened. Sunny Greinacher, who played at Gonzaga from 2011 to 2015, she nabbed a gold medal in women's 3-on-3 basketball. We're going to talk about that and a preview of Tuesday's Olympic action, all coming up in just a second. But first, folks, let's talk about FanDuel, because I love sports and you love sports. We all love sports. That's why we're talking about them in August here. The dog days of summer, we get fewer games. The sports, they're just not sportsing the way we would like them to. Thankfully, we have the Olympics. FanDuel also lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I am in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Team Canada right now, 7.5-point favorites to defeat France on Tuesday. Depending when you're listening to this show, if that game hasn't started yet, I think Canada's going to take this one. I think France's guards are too big of an issue. And I think Canada's going to win by double digits. So definitely go ahead to FanDuel.com and make the most out of your summer. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we're still talking Olympic basketball. In fact, we're still talking 3-on-3 Olympic basketball here as we transition into the second segment. Instead of theorizing whether a men's basketball 3-on-3 team made up of Gonzaga alumni could win a gold medal, let's talk about a Gonzaga alumni who did win a gold medal at 3-on-3 basketball. Sunny Greinacher wins a gold medal with Germany. They defeated Spain 17-16 to capture that gold medal. We'll talk about the third place game, the bronze medal game between Team USA and Canada, but Sunny Greinacher gets gold. And somebody can correct me because I am sure that I am missing someone. And I tried to find any articles, tried to find anything out there that indicated the truth on this. But as far as I know, Sunny Greinacher becomes the second Gonzaga player to win, or second Gonzaga alumni to win a gold medal at basketball. I don't know if there are other gold medalists or other medalists from other sports. Again, I couldn't find anything to indicate that. But a gold medal in basketball for Sunny Greinacher. Obviously, John Stockton won a gold medal for Team USA in 1992 on the Dream Team. We will see if Mark Few gets himself a gold medal, possibly Andrew Nembhard or Kelly Olynyk get a gold medal. Less likely, but still theoretically possible. Filip Petrusev could get himself a gold medal as well. Rui Hachimura is eliminated. Yvonne Ejim for Team Canada's women's basketball team is eliminated. Kacie Bosch for Team Canada's 3-on-3 is eliminated, but Sunny Greinacher takes home the gold. Still some more opportunities for other Zags to do so. Greinacher had 5 points and 3 boards. She was 1 of 3 on 1-point shots, 2 of 2 on 2-point shots in this game. She was probably arguably the best player for Germany, arguably the best player on a gold medal winning team for Germany in the 3-on-3 basketball. What an incredible accomplishment for her. She was a 2-time All-WCC player while she was in Spokane. She was an excellent player on the block in the low post for, at the time, Coach Kelly Graves. Of course, Coach Fortier was on staff as well. She's been in Paris watching these games. I'm sure is incredibly excited for Sunny to see her get that gold medal. Sunny's been representing Germany on the FIBA's world stage for a long time. Again, as we talked about in that first segment, to be eligible to participate for your country in 3-on-3, you have to have participated in a handful of 3-on-3 events. That's what she's been doing for the last couple of years, building up to this opportunity to potentially take home a gold medal, which she did. Huge congratulations to her. Unfortunately, she's the only 3-on-3 Gonzaga alumni to take home a medal. Kacie Bosch for Team Canada was upset, or beat, I guess. I don't know if it was an upset necessarily by Team USA. Both teams were expected to be in that gold medal conversation. Only Team USA ends up medaling. They get a bronze. Unfortunately, Team Canada does not get that medal. 16-13 was the final score for the U.S. squad. Kacie Bosch had 3 points and a rebound in her 5 minutes of action for Team Canada. Hailey Van Lith was the star for Team USA, 6 points. She was 5 of 6 from the field on those one-pointers. She also hit a free throw as well. There was a lot of kind of scrutiny of this women's basketball team. Obviously, Cameron Brink goes down with the injury, so they add Ryan Howard in. Ryan Howard, Dearica Hamby, and Hailey Van Lith makes a very solid squad, but they didn't do super well early on. There was some criticism. They ended up finding their way. They wanted a gold. They wanted at least a silver. they'll settle for bronze. At least they're medaling. But yeah, tough news for Kacie Bosch, who's been a strong representative for Canada on the 3-on-3 side for the last couple of years. Looking ahead to the games on Tuesday, and some of these games are taking place really early on Tuesday. I'm recording this on Monday evening, so as you're listening to this, some of these games might have already started. Some of these games might have already been over. In fact, Serbia versus Australia is very likely already over. That game is at 5:30 in the morning on Tuesday. That's Pacific time, so 8:30 in the morning on the East Coast. Serbia is 6.5-point favorites at FanDuel. If you're listening to this and the game hasn't started and you feel invested in that, definitely go check out FanDuel.com to get a bet in on that game. I like the Serbians in this one because I like Nikola Jokic a whole bunch. Jokic has absolutely been excellent so far in the Olympics because he's an excellent basketball player, period. When he was on the floor for Serbia against Team USA, they played even. In the 9 minutes that he sat, Team USA outscored Serbia by 26. That is how big of an impact Jokic had on that game. He now gets Jock Landale from Australia, obviously a St. Mary's alumni there alongside Patty Mills and Matthew Dellavedova. The story for the Gonzaga side, of course, is not only wanting to see those three St. Mary's players get eliminated from medal contention, but it's also an opportunity for Filip Petrusev to advance. He has been very good in these Olympics. If you only watched him in the game against Team USA, which is very reasonable, you would not believe me, but he has been very good in the other games. He did not really show up in that game against Team USA. He had 2 points, was given the incredibly unenviable task of defending Kevin Durant and LeBron James in that game, but he has been very good in the other games, and I think he's going to have a nice game here against Australia. At 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern time, Canada versus France. This is a fun one, and it's unfortunate that one of these two teams is about to get eliminated. It's unfortunate because both these teams are incredibly exciting, incredibly fun, but the way that the bracket shook out, the way that the way that France performed in the pool qualifiers kind of puts them in a position where they have to beat a medal contending Canada team in order to advance, in order to survive here. For Canada, this game effectively is a battle of Canada's guards and France's bigs, because Canada's guards are much better than France's guards. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jamal Murray, Andrew Nembhard. That's your three main guards right there for that team, depending whether you consider RJ Barrett or Lou Dort guards, versus Evan Fournier, Nanda DeColo, Frank Ntilikina. Not a great group of guards for France. It's just not really their expertise right now. Bilal Koulibaly is very young. When he gets better, I think that'll help the French team. Nolan Traore is excellent, but he's too young right now. He's very young right now. I think he's a big part of the future for France on the guard play. But on the front court side, it's Victor Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert versus Kelly Olynyk and Dwight Powell and Trey Lyles for Canada. That's Canada's weakest spot right now. So that's going to be the really interesting matchup. Canada 7.5-point favorites. I like the Canadians in this one. I think they're going to take it. They're playing really good basketball right now. Dylan Brooks, RJ Barrett have looked great. Andrew Nembhard was excellent in their most recent game as well. I'm really excited to see how this game goes. Sad somebody's going to lose, but hoping for the Zags side of things that it is France that loses and that Canada advances. Hoping Serbia advances against Australia. And then we got Team USA versus Brazil. That game is at 12:30 Pacific time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. USA should handle this one. They got the best draw because they won their pool play and they had a huge margin of victory. So that gives them the kind of advantage coming into the actual elimination games. They're 26.5-point favorites right now against Brazil. They have been blasting teams. The consternation that a lot of fans had before the Olympics started of, they're only barely beating teams, they're fine. They're fine. Steve Kerr was messing around with some lineups. He's got a better sense now. He's still messing around with some lineups, but it's working just fine for Team USA up to this point. Anthony Davis and Bam Adebayo have been great in the front court. LeBron and Durant are LeBron and Durant, and they're playing like those two guys, so it's not a surprise there. Steph Curry hasn't really got going. I'm interested to see if he has a big game here, kind of something we just haven't seen him really bring to the table yet. He's obviously incredibly talented. He's getting up there in age, but so are LeBron James and Kevin Durant, and they don't seem to be bothered by it. So I expect to see Steph have a nice game here. And like I said, 26.5-point favorites. Wouldn't be surprised at all if Team USA covers that one. Well, folks, Anton Watson, he signed his first NBA contract. After 5 years at Gonzaga, he is officially an NBA basketball player. We're going to talk about what that means for him. Also, a former Zag recruiting target is heading to the Big East. We discussed that as well, all coming up in just a second. But first, folks, let's talk about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what helps keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits to LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. Plus, with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back because, folks, with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that W. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and eBay's guaranteed fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. And we're closing out the show with a couple of updates here, one on a pro Zag, one on a recruiting front. We're going to start with Anton Watson. The Boston Celtics have signed Anton to a 2-way contract. This was always the expectation. Most second-round picks, particularly late second-round picks, end up getting inked to 2-way deals. For those unfamiliar, a 2-way contract is effectively a contract that allows you to move between the NBA roster and the G League roster, which for Boston is the Maine Celtics in Maine. There is limitations on how many NBA games you can play. You spend the majority of the season in the G League, but you do get an opportunity to play. I think it's like 45 days that you get to spend in the NBA. So not 45 games necessarily, but a certain amount of games that you get to play. And if you play more than that, they have to convert your contract into a standard NBA contract. 2-ways are a great way for teams to have a few extra roster spots, be able to move players interchangeably up and down the way that, Major League Baseball has operated for decades. And I think it's been a benefit to the NBA, and it's been a benefit for players like Watson and other players who are kind of on the fringe of being a top 10 or 12 player on an NBA roster, because if you're not that and you're not getting rotation minutes, it's hard to stick. And so I think that this is kind of a way to alleviate that and give more players actual money, like actual NBA contract type of money, while not necessarily forcing them to stay up there and never play while they can still develop in the G League. So it's been a positive addition to the NBA contract space for the last, I think, 5 or 6 years that we've had these 2-way contracts, but totally what we kind of expected Anton Watson to end up getting. Watson was the 54th overall player selected in the 2024 NBA draft by Boston, one spot ahead of Bronny James, who went 55th to the Los Angeles Lakers, who signed a guaranteed contract, although there are other factors at play with Bronny James's contract with the Lakers. This isn't about him. This is about Anton Watson, who averaged about 12 points and 5 rebounds in his summer league performance with Boston. He shot 35% from 3 on 4 attempts per game. That's the stat that really matters here. That's not to say the other stuff doesn't matter. 12 points a game is great. 5 rebounds a game is great. But what we wanted to see from Watson, and more importantly, what Brad Stevens wanted to see from Boston or from Watson, was a willingness to shoot threes and some level of consistency. 7 of 20 is what Watson went in his 5 games in summer league. 7 of 20 from 3, 35%. 35% is about where we want Watson to be. He doesn't need to be 40% to be valuable. It would help, as it always would. But if he's 30%, even if his defense is great, which it's going to be, he's a good defender. I think you expect that his rebounding is probably not going to be as good, just because the NBA is the best athletes on the planet. And so I think he's not going to be as great of a rebounder. The connectivity, the ability to make passes and stuff, that's all still going to be there. But what the Celtics want from Anton Watson is the ability to play good defense, be a switchable big who can guard guards and bigs at the NBA level, and hit open threes. Those are the 2 things they're going to ask Anton Watson to do. The nice thing about being in the NBA is everybody's kind of a specialist. There aren't a lot of lead, like facilitators, guys who make things happen. Every team has at least 1, maybe 2 of those guys, and how good that particular player is basically how good your team is at the NBA level. But everybody else is a role player. And for Anton Watson, he's always going to be a role player. He was never going to be a featured player at the NBA level. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just he's tailor-made to be a specific 3-and-D role player type. And the 3 part is the question. Because if he can't knock down open threes, he becomes kind of unplayable even with the elite defense. So 35% on 4 attempts per game, that's fantastic. Perfect. Great. Bump that up to 37, 38%, you're golden. You got yourself an 8 to 10 year NBA career, provided you stay healthy. He's going to make his NBA debut this year. It's going to be amazing. He's going to spend most of his year with the Maine Celtics. It's also a little bit unfortunate that one of the roster spots that goes to Anton probably was taken away from Killian Tillie. I think Watson always had the advantage of getting this roster spot. Tillie signed with Boston, was agreeing to play for Boston's summer league team even before they drafted Anton Watson. But once they used the draft pick on Watson, he became the more likely recipient of one of those two-way contracts. We'll see what happens with Tillie. Boston doesn't have any more two-way contracts. They could sign him to their G League team and potentially call him up if a situation arises where they can bring him up. Maybe another team will sign him to a two-way contract. Who knows? We don't have an update on Killian Tillie at this point. But Watson kind of was always expected to grab one of those two-way spots, and that ends up being the reality for him. Last thing I want to talk about on today's show, Julius Halaifonua. You've heard that name. It's probably because I've talked about him 5 or 6 times over the summer. He was a former Zag target in the 2025 recruiting class, and yet instead he has reclassified. He will be a freshman in 2024 this season, and he won't be playing at Gonzaga. He's going to be playing for Ed Cooley and the Georgetown Hoyas. Halaifonua has been on the radar for Gonzaga for a while now. I talked to him I think last year, before even last season started, was when we first kind of heard his name. He's a 7-footer. He's from New Zealand, played in Australia, 7 foot, about 300 pounds. He's a big, big dude. He's a passer. He loves facilitating the offense. He loves kind of getting into actions that way. I thought the style of play that he plays kind of really fits at Gonzaga, so that's why they were invested. Most of the other schools that were early in on him were not super high-profile programs. Xavier, Virginia Tech, Georgetown were all in on him pretty early. We started to hear rumors that Kentucky and North Carolina were in on him. I don't know how serious they were. Like, just because they're talking to him doesn't necessarily mean they're like, hey, we're throwing a scholarship offer at you right away type of thing. So he was never felt super serious to Gonzaga. At least it kind of fizzled out, and it was like, oh, he's still on the radar. They still have contacted him, but who knows how serious it is. Once he announced he was reclassifying, he hadn't actually committed to Georgetown yet, but once he reclassified, it was very clear he's not coming to Gonzaga because they don't have any more scholarships for the 2024 season. So we kind of knew at that point, all right, he's going to end up going somewhere else. We find out it is now going to be at Georgetown for Ed Cooley and the Hoyas, really hoping, on a side note, that Cooley can get Georgetown out of this just really bad funk that they've been in the Patrick Ewing era. Georgetown was a powerhouse basketball program for decades under John Thompson, and they've really not been good in the Patrick Ewing and now the start of the Ed Cooley era. I think Cooley's going to get him out of this, but man, it has been really rough. I hope that this is potentially a helpful start to them turning things around. He's the 60th ranked player in the updated 2024 class at On3. For the Zags, they're still prioritizing 2025 recruits. Isaiah Harwell is going to make his decision September 12th, for about a month and a week out from hearing where he's going to go. Zags, Cal, Texas, and Houston are the top 4 there. Nick Comenia still hasn't even revealed a list. We know the Zags are obviously in on him. They've had him on campus twice. USC, UCLA, Oklahoma, Minnesota, UNLV are a handful of other programs on the list here too. But again, without him actually giving us a top 10 or a top 5 or anything like that, we're kind of just still waiting to see what the situation is there for the 6'8" forward from Harvard Westlake. Kingston Flemings is the other player here, top 15 prospect in the 2025 class, a guard from San Antonio. He is set to visit Gonzaga at Craziness in the Kennel, so not expecting an update in the near future on Flemings, but a name to watch. Houston and Texas are among the other schools in the mix there as well. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. I want to thank all of you for making this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Really appreciate all of you, especially the everyday listeners, especially those of you hanging out with us on our Discord channel as well. Again, free to join. Link in the show notes if you haven't come hung out with us there yet. We got more fun stuff later this week. We got some guests lined up for you all. We're going to continue to keep you up to date on the Olympic stuff as we get more updates there, any recruiting updates that come through as well. Thanks again for listening, folks. And until next time, as always, go Zags.